Hey everybody, welcome to the Four Pillars today. And today, Monaco, I have my dear friend and business partner, Monaco Perez, with me today. Stavros and George are not with us.
Yeah, they took the day off.
Yeah, but it's okay because today we're going to talk about American football, so they probably wouldn't have much to say anyway. More
Who are we
specifically,
talking about?
you know who we're going to talk about. So, recently, the greatest coach in the history of college football, not arguably, the greatest coach in history of college football, Nick Saban, retired.
Oh.
And as a yeah, oh boy, look at Monaco.
I found a new toy.
Effects. Wow, oh boy. So
he did retire, but I actually watched on ESPN, they did like a mini documentary thing, and man, like hats off, like respect, major respect to like not only obviously everything he did in football, but even afterwards, and just hearing the way he was speaking about all the players and just what a relationship he had with them, but not only as far as like a coach, football wise, like coaching them like in life, like like giving them advice, like life advice, like, that's where I was like, wow, like this is awesome.
No, I just, I don't even know where to start. So the first thing I want, because again, I've used things that I've learned from observing his career at seminars for years.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just think let's have a show here talking about a few key things. So I don't have the exact details in front of me, but there was so much that came out in the days after he retired. And the first thing I noticed is he was a high school coach, then a very small-time college coach, and always assistants. Assistant. So he was assistant in high school, assistant at a junior college, assistant in the college, another assistant in college. Then he was an assistant in the pros. Then he went back to college. And it took him almost 20 years before he got his first head coaching job. And it was not a big-name head coaching job. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, and people hear this all the time, you got to pay your dues. But people don't want to pay their dues. They want to fast forward past that. Mm-hmm. But here's what's amazing. Like, imagine if someone like Nick Saban was given the Alabama job in the very beginning. You know what I mean? The odds are he would not have had the same level of success because as the years went by, he coached under people like Bill Belichick, which if you don't know him, he's probably considered the greatest NFL pro coach ever, and all these different coaches, and he learned the right way and the wrong way. He learned how to build You're talking about how incredible his relationships were with the players. Well, I'm sure a 25-year-old version or a 30-year-old version of him didn't have the wisdom that a 50 or 60-year-old version of him had. So, nothing of greatness comes quick or easily. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing I love is he paid his dues and had a lot of losing seasons. You know what I mean? But the one thing is that he just kept his eye on the prize and he kept moving forward. And when he got to Alabama, he really knew what he was doing. You know what I mean? But, then no matter how great of a coach you are, and I just heard another great coach saying this today, if you don't have players, it doesn't matter. So what Saban was really great at doing was casting his vision and selling people on it. And it's so funny when people go, I don't want to be in sales. Really? Yeah. Because if you're a visionary, if you're Stephen Jobs, and I'm jumping tracks from him, but imagine, if you haven't read Stephen Jobs' book, imagine starting iTunes and having to go to artists like Paul McCartney and Mick Jagger and convince them that they should let go of their whatever high royalty they had every time they sold a record and change it to where they get next to nothing every time someone downloads a song. I mean, that's a sales job, man. That's taking your vision and transferring it. So Saban got a guy named Julio Jones, was the first star player coming out of college who was choosing between Auburn, who's the arch rival of Alabama, and he got Julio Jones to come. And then because he came, a couple other key players came, and that was the beginning of the dynasty. You know what I mean? And, we could go on and on. I'll say a couple things. first of all, he talks about there's five ways that you do anything. In the beginning, you can be number one, you can be poor at doing something. Number two, you can be average at doing something. Number three, you can be good at doing something. Number four, you can be great at doing something. Or number five, you can be elite at doing something. And most people put in enough energy to do one of the first three things. So that was what he was always telling his players. I'm looking for people who are going for great or, more importantly, elite.
Right.
And he would also go on to say, look, poor players, average players, and good players want the coaches to leave them alone. They just want to be able to, put in a half-hearted effort and let it go by the wayside. But a great player, and certainly an elite player, they want to be coached hard, and an elite player wants to be coached every play. Yeah. So in other words, a lot of guys go, well, I'm really, really good. I'm an all-star. I'm whatever you might be doing. Yeah. You're like, hey, how dare you tell me I didn't do something right? Or how dare you tell me I could be better in some aspect? But it's like, that's where, again, my mentor told me back in the day, you're either teachable or unteachable.
Right.
And if you're most people are, well, I shouldn't say this. People who become successful are teachable at a phase of their game, but it's weird how success actually can hurt people, because if you were very teachable, but now all of a sudden you have success, so your ego is propped up, so now all of a sudden you're unteachable. Yeah. What Saban is saying, elite players are always teachable. They always want to get better. Think about Kobe Bryant. I mean, calling Michael Jordan at 2:00 in the morning, studying his footwork and a videotape, asking these questions. It's just, but that's elite, guys. And again, elite doesn't come with talent. Again, talent is irrelevant. Saban was able to get the most talented kids in the country to come to Alabama because he leveraged his success, which I'll talk about in a second. But the bottom line was talent doesn't matter. I remember sitting with Larry Fitzgerald, Hall of Fame wide receiver, or if he's not in the Hall of Fame, he will be. Yeah. And, we were sitting at a charity dinner together. He asked me what I did. I told him personal development. We started getting into a whole conversation. He's like, dude, I love it. He goes, because, again, it's not the physical talent. It's the mindset. There's so many guys who come into the NFL with this incredible talent and just assume they don't have to work that hard or they don't have to have a great mindset and they're just going to rely on their talent. He's like, those guys just don't last.
Make it right.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It really, really is. So what do you want to? What are your thoughts on Nick? You've been doing some research. I don't want to dominate the podcast.
No. I mean, again, like I said, it was super awesome that even they were saying that afterwards he's still gonna have an office there on Alabama, because he's like, you know what? I want people to be able to come. I want some of my guys to be able to come and ask me questions. I still want to coach them. I still want to help them out. And with him, it's just more of that legacy. He kept on talking about legacy and what do you want to leave on to. Just the future, not generation, but I guess on his end, it's the future people that have, grown with him or that he's been able to coach. Yeah. But then another thing that he mentioned also, which actually I wrote it down, that people don't react to success, they react to failure, which he's saying kind of like what is more dominating or what's more motivating to somebody, which, we've talked about that, whether it's success or failure. So what do you, I guess you've obviously studied Nick Saban a lot more than I have.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. Well, here's the thing about Nick, and I'll get back to success and failure. Yeah. But the thing is about him, he's famous, if you really study him, for something he calls the process. And I believe he got the process, if I'm not mistaken, from studying a guy named Bill Walsh, who was the head coach at San Francisco 49ers, winning all these championships. And it's like you've got to be the best you can be on this play. And Nick, one of his famous quotes is, be where your feet are. Like, it's just a way of saying, don't be daydreaming. Don't be thinking about tomorrow or yesterday or the last play or the play. Just be where you are and do your job. And that's the other thing. Do your job. That's the thing at Alabama over and over again. Do your job. Do your job. So we're a team. So we've got to have a team mindset. But I, as a member of the team, have to do my job.
Right.
You know what I mean? And what he tried to convey to them was you're playing for each other. That's where the teamwork. So in other words, think about it, man. It's not a natural thing. Like if I'm a player and you're telling me to do my job, it's natural for me to do my job for my own personal glory.
Yeah.
The trick is I'm not doing my job so I can get paid, so I can be a superstar, so I can get the adulation of the media. I'm doing my job so I don't let my fellow teammates down. Yeah. I don't want to be the weak link. You know what I mean? So it's the process of every play being your best. That's why, and I know you've laughed at me over the past. Monico's not an Alabama fan. He's a closet Alabama fan. He doesn't like to admit it. He's a University of Texas fan.
Yeah. My daughter's an Alabama fan, and now she's an OU fan. But it's actually cool. Like I was listening earlier in the week. I don't even remember where it was, but they were asking somebody like, "Hey, aren't you upset that your kid doesn't cheer for your team? Like, don't you want them?" And he's like, "No, I want them to have their own opinion. Like, let them be their own person, and that's cool if they are going for the opposite team." And it's hilarious because my daughter does. She'll be like, "Hey, who's Texas playing today?" And I'll be like, "Texas Tech or A&M." She's like, "Okay, I'll cheer for Texas Tech." And I'm like,
"That's funny."
What?
That's
but
what
she's just
your daughter is doing to you what you've done to me for ever since I've known you. Well, see, the point I was starting to make was, look, it's the fourth quarter, and Alabama for the whole time they won their games often by a lot. So it would be a typical game. It's a fourth quarter. We're up by way more points. The other team could never possibly win. Or maybe there's 3 minutes left in the game, and a player screws up, and Saban's on his sideline having an emotional meltdown, like screaming and going crazy. And everyone's like, "Dude, chill out, relax." But again, they don't get it.
Yeah.
It's the process. Yeah. Be your best on every play. So what he teaches them, it doesn't matter what the score is. You be where your feet are. Play it. The old cliche is you play it 1 point at a time, but it's hard to get into that mindset. Yeah. But that's the process. So think about this for a minute. If you're up by 50 points, well, you could see why you might be a little more lackadaisical. But the other part of why this is so powerful is what if you're down by 15 points and you feel like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose? That's a bad mindset. Yeah. But if you look at every play, like it doesn't matter what the score is. It's 0-0. I'm going to execute on this play. It doesn't matter if I did bad on the last play. So that's one of the main things. And you can take that into your business, man. If you're a salesperson and you're 0 for your last 10 appointments, you've got to be able to forget about that and play this play. Even again, if you went out and you made 10 out of 10 on your last sales, you don't want to miss this sale by being complacent, because your commission on this sale might be bigger than all the other 10 put together. Yeah. So the whole idea of following the process, being the best you can possibly be. And if you can get into a place, and this kind of gets into a tribal leadership, we've talked about that before, where instead of working at like I'm great, like do it because we're great. Right. So be the very best you can possibly be, but do it for your teammates more than you're doing it for yourself.
That's what I was going to say, is being here, that since we've started, Life Mastery Training, Life Mastery Trainings, that's one of the things that I enjoy. And I think it's something that ever since I met you, now close to 20 years, is that you instilled that teamwork mentality. Because even when I first started, it's not like I just started and doing already AV production or everything like that. But I was, doing the appointments, doing the calls, doing the, getting up in front of the room, doing all that. But it wasn't me individually. It was like we were part of a team down in Austin, and each person played their role. Yep. And no matter what your role was, you just did it at the best, because you didn't want to let the other, people down. And some people were, they were greeters. They were greeting people as they came in. But even with that person, they were doing it like at a super, high level, because they were now entrusting their people or their appointments with you. So you definitely had to play, kind of like that mentality that you were
Yeah.
talking about the process. But even here at Life Mastery Trainings, it's the same thing. Like whenever I'm doing something, making a call, negotiating this or anything like that, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I don't want to let down Mark, George, and Stavros. Like, because they're, it's almost like you guys are on the shoulder, the whole,
Yeah.
not the devil and the angel, but
Wow. I better be the
well,
angel of
I don't know about that. But I was going to say, like, it's you take a higher mindset as far as any time that you do make a call,
Yeah.
anytime that you are making, even if it's bringing somebody up on stage,
Yep.
in my mind, I'm
You're
like,
doing
okay, yeah, you do it at the best that you can.
the highest level you can. Yeah, and you're great at that. But I agree with you, buddy. I just think it's again, it's not natural
Right.
but that's where you need to be aligned with the right people. When you're aligned with the right people and you have the right teammates, then you get into the thing where you don't want to let them down. I will say this, and this has nothing to do with Nick necessarily, but it's like it's hard to play on the field and care about your teammates that much if you never spend any time off the field.
Mm-hmm.
So, over the years, we spent a lot of time
Yeah.
together not working. And same thing with Stavros and George. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That's why we don't mind working like crazy, because we really genuinely like each other and care about each other.
Yeah.
But back to Nick.
So
I want to talk about a couple more things. Competition. So this is the other thing. Like I told you, Nick was a great recruiter. And he would, and if you don't understand college football, it's different. In the pros, they draft you. So if it's my draft pick, I pick you, you have to come to my team. In the pros, in college, totally different. The kid can go wherever they want to. So you have to sell them on coming to you. And here's what's crazy. Like a lot of schools would say, well, if you come here, we'll just make you the starter. Like you'll start for sure. And Nick would never do that. He would say, look, we're bringing the best talent in the country in. And, he'd sit there and even the mom and dad of the player, you know what I mean, would be sitting there going, well, if he comes, is he going to start? He goes, I can't guarantee you that. I can guarantee you he'll have a chance to compete. And that's what we do. We compete. Wow. And it's like every day, it doesn't matter what you did in the past.
Yeah.
What matters is what are you doing here? Are you growing? Are you getting better? Are you being a great teammate? Do you have a great mindset? The other thing is every year during spring practice, leading up to the season, the 30 days before a season, he would bring in a world-class public speaker to address the team. And it might be a great athlete like Kobe Bryant. There's a guy, Damon West, who I know, the coffee bean guy. He's phenomenal. But he would go out of his way. Marcus Luttrell, the guy, the Navy SEAL from that movie. Yeah. Like these amazing speakers, and they would be reaching these young men so they got their mind right. You know what I mean? Because that's just such an important part of it. So competing, recruiting people by telling them they're going to compete, not being afraid to tell people you're putting them in competition. If you're running an organization, you're not putting your people in competition, you're making a mistake. They will never rise to the level of their highest success. Yeah. They'll never be at that state of excellence, that fifth level we talked about, if they're not competing with someone. Humans need someone to push them. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say is rivalry. Like, he's got, well, now it seems like everyone was against his rival. Was like, we're taking him down. Like, it was almost like every year, like, okay, who's going to take down Nick Saban? And it would be,
it's hilarious. Like, my phone would blow up. We would lose one game every year, every other year. And it was like, it felt like 1,000 people texted me like, we're just sitting there waiting. But think about the mindset. Other teams are happy to get into the postseason. If Alabama didn't win the championship, it was a disaster.
Right.
So it's just a different way
mindset,
of looking at it. But I do want to talk about this. So I was fortunate enough that gentleman who was associated with the team it gave me a couple of tours of the football facility over the years. I got a football signed by Nick. I have a Tua football. Yeah, I'm a lucky guy. But anyway, going on this tour.
Do you have a Sartesian?
No, he's at Texas. Why would I?
But
want
he
this?
got mentored by.
He did. He's a great coach.
Yeah.
Okay, leave me alone. So I took this tour and I got to see some of the players. It was an incredible experience. But as I walked through the facility, like, man, it's just all laid out in such a way where he is leveraging the success he's had. And a lot of people in business do not do that. So, for example, he recruited Julio Jones, great example.
Yep.
And Julio Jones excelled, and then Julio Jones went on to the pros. He was a first-round draft pick. He made a whole bunch of money. So when he went to recruit the next wide receiver, the position Julio Jones played, he really showed them, look what we did with Julio Jones. And then, when he went to get another quarterback like Bryce Young, he said, look what we did with Tua. Look what we did with this. So he was so good at leveraging the success that they've already had. And I think a lot of organizations do not know how to do that. And that's how he became a dynasty. Because look around, there's a lot of teams who have a great season.
Right.
And then they don't. You know what I mean? I don't want to say any teams because I'll piss off other fans. But they won a championship, but then they don't even come close to competing for years because they didn't leverage their success properly.
Yeah.
So I think he was a master recruiter. He was great at painting the vision. He was great at putting people in competition, but he was great at leveraging success. And the last thing I'll say, and you can say more certainly, is there's so many quotes. But the one that just really got to me is he said, we don't practice a play until we get it right. Like a lot of people we're going to practice until we get it right. That's a typical mindset.
Yeah.
He goes, we're not going to do it until we get it right. We're going to do it until we can't get it wrong.
Oh, wow.
And that's the difference, man. Like, again, if you have that mindset and your opponent is going to do it until they get it right, come on. When you play against each other, it's obvious who's going to win.
Right.
So it's that extra effort. We talked in another podcast about being all in, giving it everything that you've got.
Right.
So again, I just think the passion, you know what I mean? Even at 71 years old this last season, he was you want to talk about all in. Just go watch a videotape of him on a sideline, at a press conference, whatever the case might be. I mean, what a great ambassador for overall excellence. I just can't say enough great things. So go study Nick Saban. Check him out, even if you don't like Alabama, even if you're a fan of a different team, or even if you're in a different part of the world and you don't follow American football. Go check this guy out. Google him, read his quotes, follow what he's done in his career. I'm telling you, he is a great template for excellence. That's all I got.
You've said it all.
We have said it all, as our friend Howard would say. All right, so that's all we've got, and we'll see you next week on the Four Pillars.